Hi, and welcome to Elves, Rings, and Nerdy Things. We are pivoting, and we're moving towards Andor Season 2. Would you say, award-winning Season 1? Set a pretty high standard for what Season 2 is going to be?
Did it win awards?
I think so.
Okay. Well, if it didn't, it should have, because it was very well. I think it was well regarded.
Yeah, especially the end. I believe I saw there was someone posted an image or an infographic that showed that a couple episodes of Andor Season 1 ended up being in the top 5 Star Wars live-action Rotten Tomato ranked things. So, yeah, very good. And here we are, about to discuss Season 2. And we're going episodic, episode by episode, until we get to the end. Sam, you notoriously hated
Yeah.
Andor Season 1 to begin.
Well, I hated episode 1 of season 1. And then we powered on, and it won me over. And I think it was helpful watching several episodes at a time for season 1, just getting into it, because you needed the entire arc. So just to give you
at least the first arc to get into it.
You needed a dramatic arc. And this is something that actually Haley pointed out when we were watching together, because she's a fan of Andor. And she said something like these, what was it? It's like so anxious, or it's so tense, or something like that. And it was true. And we were talking about that for just a little bit. And my basic way of framing that is the show is not episodic. It is serial. And any individual episode, there could be things that are resolved over the course of the episode, but especially the big stuff. Episode 1 is setting things up. Episode 2 is moving things forward. Episode 3 is where you're going to reach some sort of conclusion, and that is largely what we had. We're going to talk about episode 1, but I've seen the first 3 so far, so I kind of know where things are going. You finished the entire series, correct? Or season 2?
I'm halfway through.
Oh, okay,
season 2.
okay.
Yeah. When I realized that we were going episode by episode, I slowed down. And Carly and I caught up with Last of Us, so we're watching Last of Us Season 2 now.
Oh, I haven't even watched Last of Us yet. We don't even get HBO anymore, so I don't know how to figure that out.
Yeah. But this first episode, when I watched it, I thought, oh my God, Sam's going to hate it, because it's the same thing where, just like Season 1, things are kind of slow to begin with, and then they build and crescendo. And I think, like Season 1, there's probably going to be 3 to 4 distinct arcs with an overarching arc that tells a much broader story.
So I've avoided spoilers, but one thing I did after finishing episode 3 is I went in the Disney Plus Andor page, and I watched a behind the scenes video that just covered the first 3 episodes. And the producer, I think there are 12 episodes total, and the showrunner was like, "Yep, each 3 episode arc is one year apart." So there are, I think when we start, we're 4 years away from the events of Rogue One, which we've talked about previously. And so there'll be a series of time jumps, or maybe some of the later arcs will take place over the course of a year. But basically, episode 1 is titled 1 year later. So we're 1 year later from the end of season 1. And then every arc is going to advance the calendar another year closer to the events of Rogue One. So
because what do they say? BBY?
Yeah, BBY, which is before the Battle of Yavin, which didn't Disney try to replace that with, like, they tried to move the before and after from the Battle of Yavin to like the Starkiller incident. Did you catch on to this?
No, I haven't seen anything like that, but it makes sense that they want to prioritize the more recent.
Yeah, like, hey, but which is funny, because Andor is also a Disney Star Wars product, and it's like probably I think people didn't. I don't know. We've talked about Rogue One before. I liked it. I get the criticisms. If I liked it because I was a Star Wars fanboy, fine. I still liked it, so I'm not going to apologize for it. And then I think Andor stands on its own as far as a Star Wars product, just a dramatic television show in its own right.
Yeah. And Mandalorian, it's the only other like modern Star Wars live action product that I really care for. And even that has its ups and downs now, where
Yeah, I haven't watched season 3.
Yeah.
I heard people didn't like it, but there's a
That's,
movie coming out, right?
yeah. And Ahsoka is good. So if you want to give Ahsoka a chance, and I know we haven't talked about it, but the show Acolyte, which only got
Yeah,
one season and then was canceled, I actually kind of enjoyed it. And I wish it would have gotten higher audience numbers to keep it around a little longer, but it had a lot of potential, I thought.
okay. I know that, well, I I know it had an extremely high budget, and then it got a lot of flack for some of its political stuff. It kind of like got caught up in some of the culture war, although some of the coverage I read kind of pushed back on that and had other things to point at. Either way, it was canceled. So
Mhm.
yeah, I've thought about going back and watching Acolyte, but it's just a matter of finding time in the day, in the
Yeah.
week to do it.
Maybe if we get a point where we don't have like content that we're excited about,
Yeah, there you
we'll
go.
back and do a deep dive on Acolyte and where it went wrong.
Okay.
But Andor, season two,
Yeah,
episode
and
one.
episode 1, it's titled 1 Year Later. 1 year after the Ferrex uprising, Cassian impersonates an Imperial test pilot in order to steal a prototype of a new Imperial ship, the TIE Avenger. When he attempts delivery on a jungle moon, he is ambushed by a rogue band of squabbling guerrillas, the Maya Pei Brigade. On the agricultural planet Mina Rao, Bix, Brasso, and Willman, and B2 Emo, fear detection by the Empire while in the undocumented employ of a local farmer. Bix suffers from PTSD caused by Gorst's torture. On Chandrilla, Mon Mothma prepares for her daughter's arranged marriage, but is informed by Tay Kolma that his financial investments have turned sour. Orson Krennic oversees a secret meeting of Imperial officers about forcibly mining the resources of the planet Gorman due to its heavy concentration of a rare mineral, an initiative to which Dedra is reluctantly assigned. The conflict between the Maya Pei insurgents reaches a boiling point, and several members are shot and killed as Cassian is taken hostage. All right, Sean, why did you think I would react negatively to this episode?
I think I had that opinion after the first two, and it
Okay.
was very much just, it felt like it was a slow moving, slow burn, especially when we end up talking about episode two next week. But yeah, I just thought it was really slow, and I would have been nervous had we not lived through season one already. So I
Mm-hmm.
kind of assumed, like, when not much happened after the end of the first episode, I was like, okay, well, I'm used to this. At least I'm prepared. But there were a couple things that I did think were pretty good in this episode. Let's go.
Well, can I respond to
Yes, please offer a
your
retort.
yeah, well, so one, I think the primary thing is my expectations changed. And thinking about it as a story told in a serial format with these distinct arcs made up of multiple episodes, I kind of ratcheted down my expectations for a bunch of things to happen in one episode. And what that did is it really allowed me to absorb the mood of the show, this tension, this drama. And actually I find it really enjoyable. And I think there was something, what was it that I think we talked about this during our House of the Dragon? No, it was during our it was during our Rings of maybe season 1 of Rings of Power. We were talking about the difference between being boring and being a slow burn. And Andor is a slow burn punctuated by some action, but
Mhm.
there are other shows that are just straight up boring. And I thought a lot of the Rings of Power was boring, but here it's like the
There's a payoff.
there is payoff, and the journey itself is really fun because they just pepper these things in there, which we can talk about as we kind of move through the episode. But so I liked it a lot, and I'm more than happy to talk about all the reasons why.
Good. Yeah, let's start sequentially. Let's start with the Sinar Test Facility 73. To me, I was getting like strong Area 51 comparisons,
Hmm.
especially when you have technology that when Andor finally gets into this, what is it? They called it a TIE Avenger. Was that the
Yeah,
name of it?
which it's this is something I don't appreciate that there's more information like on the wiki than there is given to us in the
In the
show
episode itself. Yeah.
because and ultimately it doesn't matter what it's called. Like we all recognize it as a TIE fighter that obviously is advanced. it doesn't matter. It's called the TIE Avenger. What matters is that it's the mechanism by which he gets around and the plot of the show is advanced.
Yeah. So he's there to hijack this test ship and bring it back to this jungle planet where it's going to be taken by somebody else and transported for the rebellion. But he gets into it and doesn't know how to fly it because it's so new and so advanced that he has no possible idea. And it comes to that point. I laughed pretty hard when it's like an inverted video game,
Mm-hmm.
inverted controls where he pushes forward, but he goes backwards. And like anybody who plays video games from like the 2000s gets that. And I'm sure, like me, automatically went into the game settings and then adjusted them to be non-inverted.
Two points on that. One, that's why I sucked at Halo for a really long time. And two, that is also what happened in the excellent, although terribly schlocky movie Independence Day with Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum.
Mm-hmm.
When he flies the alien craft for the first time, it's like this big tense scene. He's like, I can fly it. And they, to save the world, they have to
Go
fly this thing.
backwards. Yeah.
And he immediately backs up right into the wall. And everyone's like, oh my God, terribly embarrassing. Anyway, that was fun. It's like that's the type of thing they
Good
can get away
callback.
with that. It worked, right? It worked. It's not you're not ripping off Independence Day. Independence Day was ripping off Star Wars in a lot of ways, but that was
Yeah.
fun.
I also thought this scene showed great progression in 1 year, like almost unbelievable progression to go from just joining the rebellion, meeting up with Luthen at the end of season one, and all of a sudden he's so skilled in espionage that he's infiltrating top secret facilities.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's you got to suspend disbelief, and they have 4 years to get to the events of Rogue One. So, of course, they're going to move forward a little bit faster. But yeah, I just said
Yeah.
came to me in that thought.
Well, and one of the best illustrations of this was his pep talk to that
Mhm.
girl, right? The person who was probably there. Somebody had to recruit her and convince her to, at great personal risk, which she voices, to facilitate this stealing of the ship. And that's last season he had to be, he was the one who was receiving pep talks from that was the person I can't remember his name, the guy who died during the heist, and he was writing the like propaganda book,
Oh, the
basically.
kid, yeah.
Yeah, it's like not propaganda, it's like the ideology of the rebellion, and Andor's like,
Communist Manifesto of the
yeah,
rebellion.
basically he's like whatever, dude, I'm just here to do a job. But then we kind of we see him progress, and yeah, and then he's the one who's giving the talk. So yeah, that was good.
And that talk was great because it shows the difference between leadership styles of Cassian and Luthen.
Mm,
Like Cassian was comforting, and he was saying, "No, you can look at me. Like I'm not as paranoid about people knowing who I am." And it's much more of a uplifting style of leadership versus
hmm
Luthen, which is like, "Oh, you've seen my face. I'm going to kill you because my secrecy is of the utmost importance." So I thought that was an interesting dynamic, showing the difference between Cassian and Luthen. But then Cassian, by the time we get to Rogue One, is more intense.
Oh
Like
yeah, what does he do in the first scene in Rogue One?
kills
Kills a dude who's
an
like not.
informant. Yeah.
Yeah, and who and that guy wasn't, because that happened in episode 1 of season 1, but it was just two guards who were hassling him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who were initiating a fight with him. This was somebody who was a contact, was an asset, and Andor iced him.
Yeah. How about Ferrex? You ready to move on to Ferrex, or do you have anything else you want to say about Sinar test facility? I did think it was funny the scene where the rocket launcher guy was going to shoot him, and then he moves out of the way, and then he shoots that giant laser
Yeah,
bomb
yeah.
thing and just evaporates him from existence.
There was some good comedy there, and yeah, it was fun. No, but we can move on to the Ferric stuff because that was pretty good too.
Ferrex survivors are hiding out doing farm labor. At this point, they are basically undocumented laborers on another planet. I mean, that's got some social commentary right there.
hmm Can you help me out with? I remember obviously Bix and Brasso. What was Willman? What was his role?
Was
Did
he
he
the
have?
kid?
Yeah. What was he doing in season
He's
1? I don't remember.
he was the one whose dad was killed by the Empire, and he's the one who created the bomb, like the pipe bomb, and threw it into the
Okay.
parade
Yep. Okay.
or
I
whatever it
remember.
was at the end. Yeah,
Okay.
and he got taken out by Cassian and the rest of them, saved
Okay.
from the aftermath of Ferrix. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this is, I mean, it's always funny, these like gigantic agricultural planets. I feel like there's always, it's kind of a science fiction staple, right?
Mhm.
But I still like how they displayed it, and it's really grounded, and just it's a gigantic, you increase the amount of technology and the scale of the agriculture, and it fits in Star Wars. And I really like when they, it's funny, we start with a TIE fighter and flying and shooting photons and lasers and whatever else, and then you just go to like, oh, they're wheat farmers and they're mechanics, right? That is something, even in season one, I know I had some qualms initially, but it's fun to get that kind of gritty feel, and that's it's good to see these folks in this setting because it feels appropriate to like their skill set and their character.
Mhm. We have Bix being haunted by her torturer still
Yeah,
in her dreams. Yeah, I mean that's PTSD, man.
for sure.
And I don't think their health plan covers very good mental health counseling. So
Yeah.
he's probably
Uh,
going to have this for quite a while.
Yeah, and it's I can't remember the name of the actress, but she's been in a lot of stuff, not a lot, but she's in a fair number of things since season one, especially, including the movie. Oh my God, I can't remember what it's called. Basically, it's who's that guy? Is it Glenn Wilson? He was the
This is great content, everybody.
yeah, I know, me
She's in
struggling.
that movie. She's
Yeah.
with that guy. What's his name?
Sorry. Okay, I think it was a Netflix movie. It was about a guy who plays a pretends to be a hitman for the New Orleans Police Department, and then she is trying to contract a hitman to kill her husband, and
No,
he
never
falls
heard
for
of this.
her, and then there's kind of like there's a romance between them. She was great in that. Anyway, so I'm a fan of this actress. I think she is very good at what she does, and it
She's
was
just great in this show.
yeah, she is, and it's really and I feel for her so much. It's like she really portrays that trauma and that attempt to be resilient and kind of move forward. And I just, it's kind of sad knowing that, it's very unlikely that things are going to work out well, right? And, to a certain extent, I know that the other
I
bad
mean,
things are going to
yeah,
happen.
having seen, and that's the good thing about this show. Like, Rogue One reveals the fate of at least two of the characters that we're going to see this season.
Hmm.
We know, I mean, Mon Mothma makes it to the Battle of Yavin because
Hmm.
she's pivotal throughout the final three or the first four, five, six of Star Wars in her leading of the rebellion. But then we get all of these other characters where we don't know what's going to
Hmm.
happen. Like we know Andor is going to make it to the end of the season because he's in Rogue One.
Hmm.
Um, but the suspense of a lot of these other characters that yeah we don't know if Bix is going to
Yeah.
make it. She could, and that is the optimistic side of it because with the rebellion itself, a lot of them are going to die. Many Bothans died to bring this information. So I mean, they're rebels. Most of them are going to perish. And when you watch, like I was thinking back to the Battle of Hoth, and like how many rebels fucking died
Oh yeah.
just in that one battle. So
Hmm.
like the odds are pretty slim that you're going to survive, especially once they actually hit the rebel alliance itself. But
I think it. What am I trying to say? But I think they do the writing, the directing, and the acting all comes together to really make us care about these characters, even if there is this like sense of dread, because you kind of forget that in the moment and you're just feeling and watching, the kind of torment on Bix's face when she's waking up from that nightmare, or the little love story with Wilman and the local girl, and like, Brasso's attempts to kind of be a either a father figure or a big brother figure to everybody around him.
yeah, well, let's move on to Chandrilla and the arranged child marriage.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hey.
I don't have a lot to say. I think it's cool showing one of these because they've kind of said Chandrilla is a core planet, right? They're one of the inner rim core.
I think so. I mean, we at least get the impression that that is the case. And I
Yeah.
think primarily because they're so wealthy.
Hmm.
We don't know if the rest of Chandrilla is hovels, and Mon Mothma just happens to be in the 1%, even though it seems like she probably is, but something tells me the rest of Chandrila is also doing okay, kind of like Naboo. Mm,
Mhm. Yeah, that's what I was kind of getting at. It feels like a lot of those, a lot of Star Wars is the Outer Rim, destitute, like all of these. You don't really see high class shown, and I think that's why people were so opposed to Canto Bight in the
oh, the last, well,
was it yeah in Last
Last
Jedi.
Jedi. I mean, potentially, my issues with Canto Bight were
Much more the animal justice
tons of yeah, just
uh,
it was
side.
all like it's
And
yes, there.
listeners, I have no issue with animal justice, but when it's shoehorned so heavily into the plot of your show or movie that didn't make sense with the rest of the context, you could have left it out.
Yeah, but we're talking about Chandrila. But they don't. But they do reference Canto Bight in season one, right? Don't they talk about
Yeah.
because they kind of have that story about his what's his name? What's her husband's name? Oh my God, I want to say it's not Kevin. What is it?
Whose husband? Oh, I don't even remember.
Oh, come on.
He's unimportant. He barely does anything.
He
Especially
has
in this episode, he barely says anything
yeah, but I mean that's kind of his job, right?
to be an
He
absent husband.
well, no, he's there. I mean, they have an interesting dynamic. So I'll just say this: like this is one of the things where yeah, it's kind of boring because it's a child wedding, but it's
Mhm.
also really great because of like just the tension with Luthen being there in his his disguise as the antique dealer, and then Mon Mothma. Oh my God, she's just a ball of stress, which is she does a really great job, and then it just looks phenomenal. Like they did such a good job with
Yeah.
the
That set design
the
is
set design, the art, everything. It blew me away. And there was a little bit of them talking about that in the behind the scenes video or on Disney Plus. And it was totally like they were talking about, Japanese influences obviously comes through very strong, but that fits within the Star Wars aesthetic. Like it's not a new thing. Thinking about, even in the original trilogy, Darth Vader's mask is like a samurai helmet, and there's other Japanese influences. And
even
then
Jedi robes are
Jedi
very
robes, the in the prequels with Padme's, a lot of her costumes. She has like geisha makeup basically in a lot of that stuff. So the Japanese stuff is very fitting. They did it really well. And then they were talking about how they wanted to kind of have a combination of like Scottish castle and Japanese castle, which interesting but it really worked. And it's like even in these scenes where somebody like just two people talking, it was really well directed and it was just gorgeous to watch.
Mhm. With Luthen, later in the episode, they cut back to that conversation between Mon Mothma and Tay, where Tay has some bad business dealings and is trying to talk
Mm-hmm.
to her.
Mm-hmm.
And as Mon Mothma leads that conversation and is walking through, we get one like brief glimpse of a conversation where Luthen is gathering information about the Imperial Navy movements
Uh-huh.
based off
Uh-huh.
of some kid.
Yep.
And that was like beautiful writing because
Uh-huh.
like that is a throwaway line in most things. It's just like a background conversation. But then when you take in him like just gathering information as a
Mm-hmm.
spy, like this is how the rebellion functions. It's
Yeah.
these little conversations with people who like that conversation of just saying, "Oh yeah, the Navy is being relocated to somewhere else." That's that could be relatively secretive information, but
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
you're comfortable at a wedding party talking to an
Mm-hmm.
antique dealer.
I mean, because that's the thing. Luthen, as the antique dealer, is so disarming, right? He's like,
Yes,
he's got he's smiling
charismatic.
and the hair and the outfit, everything about him is just like puts you at ease because you don't really take him seriously. He's a kind of zany art dealer. But no, you're then all of a sudden you're telling him, yeah, all of my graduating class is being relocated to XYZ system. It's like, okay. And then I wonder if in a couple episodes we're gonna have oh my God, what's his name? Saw Gerrera's group like, attack the trainees on their traineeship or whatever it is. Like you could see that happening. But
Yeah.
it's also really great because it tells you like Luthen can simultaneously gather information via what is seemingly an innocuous conversation, but also like he's observing the interaction between Mon Mothma and
Tay.
Tay Kolma, right? He's like he's gathering information, but he's also like watching the assets in the room.
Mhm. Let's hit Cassian in this jungle moon before we
Oh.
move on to the last setting. I thought it was very cool to see, and we've kind of gotten this before with Saw Gerrera and like other rebel factions,
Mm-hmm.
but to see this as an example of the rebels before the Alliance, where you have Cassian landing on this planet and they can't even like work together enough to get off of the planet, and then it
Yeah.
devolves into this shootout. But I like seeing, because when you watch episodes 4, 5, and 6, you see the Rebel Alliance, and it's this great group of people who have come together. But then this show is, and previous shows before it in Mandalorian, have done a really good job of showing, and in Rogue One, what the rebels were like before they allied together and how everything was so bleak because
Mm-hmm.
they're not working together.
Yeah. The only if I had a complaint, it was that parts of episode 1 and parts of episode 2 dragged a little bit when Cassian was basically just a prisoner.
Mhm.
And I get the fact that he's also kind of subtly manipulating them and kind of pushing them into tension by like asking questions like, "Oh, who's in charge? And do you actually trust them?" Or like, you should set you should set a perimeter, doing all these things to kind of needle them, which was fine. But I did kind of get tired of seeing him, and maybe it was because his captors were a little too comedic, right? It was just they were just a little too high strung.
Slapsticky.
Yeah, a little too slapsticky. Because this is jumping ahead, but when it all culminates in rock paper scissors, the
Oh,
space
yeah.
space version of rock, I was like, it kind of undercuts it a little bit.
Well, that's episode 2, right?
I know, but it just
You bastard.
I know, I'm sorry, but it did drag a little bit, but I get it, and they also they needed to set up the TIE fighter, but then delay and create the tension of him not being in communication and kind of us figuring out how's he gonna get out of this. But yeah, that was my one complaint about this episode, and then I'll reiterate it in episode 2 coverage.
Yeah. And the last setting of this episode was an Imperial conference room with the discussion of the planet Gorman. Is it Gorman?
Gorman, yeah.
Gorma? Because the people are Gorman.
Well,
I
it's
can't
the
remember.
planet. The planet is called Gorman.
Gorman. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if that was a reference to the people themselves. But what were you what are your thoughts on that conference room setting? Because I have one thing that I think you disliked,
Oh,
but
okay.
I kind of liked.
Yeah.
So,
What's
you want
your
me to reveal, or do you want to guess?
no? What you want me to guess? What I think you think I didn't like?
Yeah, it's a really meta question, but let's see if
Okay.
you can pull it off.
The like faux 1950s style tourism video.
No, because I didn't like that either. I just
Okay.
assumed that
Okay.
I assumed we both wouldn't like it.
All right. What did you think I wouldn't
Because
like?
we didn't need that type of talking to talk about Gorman.
That was kind of fun. That was funny. I thought it was a little okay.
It
Were
felt
they,
weird.
it did like just does the government, does the trade, I it's so weird because like there's the weird like George Lucas bullshit in the prequels about the Trade Federation taxing trade routes and all that stuff. It's like, don't talk to me about the economics of Star Wars. Star Wars is about like the space fantasy and the adventure and stuff like that.
Aha! This
What?
is what I thought you didn't like.
Okay, so
In
tell
the
me.
beginning, when they're talking about policies, agendas, and
Oh,
Senate funding, I was like, I don't think Sam's gonna like the fact that they're talking about like economic policy.
oh, you're right. Yeah, okay. Here was the thing that got me. He was talking about the Emperor's plan of energy independence.
Yes.
I was like, that doesn't make any sense. One, in this universe, I just assumed they had nuclear fusion or like really advanced solar power because energy,
They
again,
have
going back.
energy blasters. I
Yeah,
mean,
you
like
have it.
getting energy from somewhere.
Yeah, you're getting energy from somewhere, and like I think episode 1, The Phantom Menace, which I don't want to reference as something to like too often, although I've done it several times. But in my defense, I just recently rewatched the Red Letter Media Mr. Plinkett's 70-minute episode 1 breakdown, which I highly recommend.
just like as long as episode one.
Yeah, almost. Well, yeah, and more entertaining. But it's like underneath the palace, there's a gigantic power plant. Where Mace or not Mace Windu, but where Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan fight Darth Maul, right?
Mhm.
Have all those like energy things. It's like that was kind of like a gigantic nuclear reactor, although it wasn't explicitly called a nuclear reactor. I just assume that energy independence is not something that the galaxy spanning empire really needs to worry about, right? Like energy independence is something that you discuss when you're one country in a world of other countries that aren't going to share or give you their energy. But when you're like a galaxy wide autocracy,
Mhm.
you're energy independent because you just take energy from one area and give it to a different area. So it could
And
have
that's
been framed a little bit differently.
yeah, and I liked the whole conversation on it's the emperor's policy, it's the emperor's agenda, because
Hmm.
to me it shows that they're still trying to put up the facade of being like at this point like a constitutional monarchy because they have a figurehead who's taken absolute power, but there's still a Senate,
Yeah.
and we want to kind of play off that the Senate really does have some power here. But then this whole meeting is about it sounds like they're going to commit genocide. Like, we don't care how many people die. We need this planet for its resources.
Yeah.
And to get these resources, we could relocate people, but we're going to prepare just in case we need to kill everybody. Like
Yeah.
it's intense. And then you also get that like Nazi propaganda of like this,
Well,
what do they call it? The Ministry of Enlightenment.
oh, the whole thing was very like Wannsee conference,
Yeah.
right? Like the just even the fact that they're talking about a planet called Gorman, like sounds a lot like Hermann Goering, the Hitler's number two, and just the kind of this discussing a genocide and the potential destruction of a planet, right? Because they're like, oh yeah, the mining will,
Damn.
destabilize the
Yeah.
planet or whatever,
Destabilize
right?
the core
Which I want to come back to that because, connection to episode or to season one of Andor and that planet that they were living on. Wasn't that also
when he was
like,
a kid.
yeah, like wasn't the idea that there's some sort of like mining disaster that made the planet uninhabitable or like largely uninhabitable or something?
Yeah, they basically like strip mined it to the point of the planet couldn't function as a planet
So
anymore. Yeah.
is that the same thing then?
It sounds like that's what
Was it
they're planning.
the same mineral?
I don't know if it's the same mineral
Okay.
because they called it
Calcite?
calcite,
Yeah. Which
which we could assume is needed for the Death Star. I think that's a safe assumption.
yeah, and that's the thing. Like, you didn't need to make up this story about energy independence. You could just say like this is a mineral that we need for our like by the imperial prerogative, for our plans. I think this is one of the issues is that why did you need the Death Star? Like, why does the Empire need to happen? I think in the expanded universe, it's like the Emperor was basically precognizant and he sensed that there was some like galaxy wide threat. And I guess it gives kind of a good motivation to the Emperor instead of just being purely evil because he's a
Mhm.
Sith and like the Sith are all about domination. But like, yeah, I'll be interested to see, is there a cover story, a meta cover story about like why this is so important? Or are we going to try to stick to this like energy independence for energy independence's sake type thing?
Yeah.
Anyway.
And my last comment, I loved the quote, "We need Gorman rebels you can count on to do the wrong thing."
Hmm.
Because
Yeah, it
that's
was
just
good.
the whole concept of these rebels are not united. They're rash. They don't think things through. So, yeah, we just need to turn them against themselves
Hmm.
and they will be their own downfall. And I thought that was great insight. And that's the kind of bad guy thinking that you get with like Admiral Thrawn
Hmm.
and like these outside of the Emperor and Darth Vader, these Sith figures who don't have these supernatural powers, like Grand Moff Tarkin, Thrawn, people who are just super intelligent and are
Hmm.
able to manipulate.
But also amoral
Yes,
or evil.
yeah, yeah. But they're able to get by without the use of the Force.
Hmm.
It's good to see.
I think yeah, that is one of the things that again, I keep going back to the prequels versus kind of the original trilogy, but when the Force is vague and rarely used, it is more interesting and more fantastic, right? But when it's used all the time, just like a lightsaber, but it's when it's used all the time, and then you try to establish these rules like, oh, it's about midichlorians, or oh, our ability to use the force is diminished because of the dark side. Like it just starts begging questions about this. But when we have these like nuts and bolts of actual, like the politics is fun, and it's also a really good backdrop for these character stories, right? Because we again, like, we need a reason for Andor and Luthen and the rebellion to be in to get involved in Gorman, and this is a fun way to do it. And it also kind of leaves the door open of like, she said you need to count on rebels to do the wrong thing at the right time. I can't remember the exact line. I know you said it just now, but it was good.
Gorman rebels you can count on to do the wrong thing.
Wrong thing. It's like, because that also could be, oh, is the Empire gonna be conducting false flag operations and killing their own people and blowing up their own mining equipment and blaming it on the rebels? Are they going to be inserting agent provocateurs into the Gorman society and like whipping people up to get more rebellious or to get more radical? Everything's on the table and it's fun.
Yeah. Almost like setting the Parliament building on fire, right?
Exactly. Little Reichstag fire. Yeah, I think the 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 Nazi stuff. I did see one headline. I didn't read the article, but I think the headline that I saw was Star Wars Andor is really trying to make the Empire the Nazis.
Isn't that what George Lucas was trying to
Yeah,
do?
I was like, that's what George Lucas like.
It's not new.
Yeah, it's not new. It's like it's such, and it's so, but like he was trying to make them the Nazis. He was also kind of doing like a fall of Rome thing with the
Yeah.
Senate and the Emperor. But it's like at the end of the day, it's like it works because for most people, that is like that's the ultimate bad guy, like the ultimate real world villain. And
Mhm.
so you just need to evoke these little things, like hence the uniforms, like which again go back to the original, like 1977 Star Wars introduced those uniforms. It's for like the I mentioned the Wannsee conference. Like not very many people know what the Wannsee conference is, or what it was, but those who do are gonna like I hope would appreciate that scene as like kind of a subtle nod. Have you seen the movie Conspiracy
Mm.
with Kenneth Branagh? And
I do love a Kenneth Branagh
he's
film.
great. Can you believe that he directed the first movie, the first Thor movie in the
Oh, I did
MCU?
know that. Yeah,
Yeah. Did he also, he didn't do the second one, too, did he?
he may have.
Okay. Yeah, but that first Thor movie was Kenneth Branagh, which
Yeah,
is fun. Anyway, so it's him and Stanley Tucci is in it. Stanley Tucci's a Nazi.
I love me some Tooch.
He plays a good villain.
Yes, he
Like,
does.
yeah.
He's been in a lot of villainous roles lately. Actually,
No. What else?
he wasn't he that like the Wintry Bones or something.
The Lovely Bones.
Lovely Bones. I remember the trailer. It's like outside and cold, but he's like a yeah. He's a
Well, but Winter's Bone is another movie with Jennifer Lawrence, which was very good. I think it won her an Oscar.
but yeah, he was a villain in a movie about bones.
Lazy Bones.
Lazy Bones.
It's the Lovely Bones,
Lovely Bones.
which is not the Lindsay Lohan vehicle. I Know Who Killed Me.
No.
I believe that's Lindsay Lohan. Anyway, what we're trying to say is Stanley Tucci, Nazis, great scene.
Stanley Tucci was a good Nazi.
He was a great Nazi.
Oh, but that's it. Do you have anything else to say about this episode?
No,
I'm
but
tapped out.
yeah, I'm tapped out too. But it was a great episode. Again, Andor season 2. I think all 12 episodes have now been released. Am I
Yes,
correct?
very, very sad.
Yeah. Okay. So it's all out there, people, but follow us along. We're going to go episode by episode unless we decide to do more episodes per podcast.
Yeah, but we don't really have anything in the future that we're like rushing to get to.
Yeah, we're not. I guess that's true.
Because
And
I guess the new Witcher season could be something, but I don't give a shit about.
well, we're gonna cover it because we
Did the first two.
we did we're already too far gone. Sunk cost fallacies. We can't go back now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not as if, we're not in a position where we need to be churning out these podcast episodes as quickly as possible. We're not competing with all the other content producers out there. This is more just a fun way for us to talk about things that we enjoy, and Andor is one of them.
This was episode 108 of Elves, Rings, and Nerdy Things. You can follow us on Facebook. You can follow us and listen to us on all of the different podcasting platforms that are out there. If you liked what you heard, leave a comment, like something, tell a friend about us. I don't know.
Do all the things, but mainly just keep listening. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, maybe episode 2 of season 2 next week. We'll see.
We'll try. We'll do our best. Bye.